Long ago, there was a young queen named Isabella. She lived in a big golden palace with tall walls and shining floors. People feared her beauty and power. But one dark night, enemy soldiers marched into her kingdom. They broke the gates, set fire to houses, and shouted for the queen. Isabella knew they wanted her crown. Her heart shook. She could not fight hundreds of men alone. She made a choice. She opened her treasure box, took off her crown, and wore the old brown dress of a palace servant. Isabella moved through the back halls of the palace. Her golden shoes made noise, so she took them off and walked barefoot. The kitchen was full of smoke. She picked up a dirty water pot to look like a worker. Soldiers rushed past her, too busy to notice. She stepped into the night as flames rose high behind her. The queen had escaped, but no one knew she was the queen. She walked toward the village, her heart heavy. Her hands shook as she hid her face in the dark cloth of her servant dress. The village was noisy with fear. People cried, some carrying bags, some looking for missing family. Isabella sat near a broken cart and listened. "The palace is gone," a farmer whispered. "The queen must be dead." She closed her eyes. No one knew she was right there. A kind old woman saw her sitting alone and asked, "Child, do you need food?" Isabella nodded. She ate bread for the first time, not on gold plates, but from rough hands. She tasted dust, but also kindness, something she had rarely felt in her palace. The old woman took Isabella to her small hut. Inside, Isabella saw clay pots, wooden chairs, and smoke from the fire. It was so different from her golden rooms. She helped wash dishes and sweep the floor. Her soft hands quickly became rough with work. At night, she lay on a straw bed, hearing dogs bark and children cry. She could not sleep. She thought of her throne, her jewels, and her people. But she also thought of the warmth of the old woman, who gave her shelter without asking who she really was. Days passed. Isabella worked with villagers. She carried water from the well, chopped wood, and cleaned houses. People thought she was a poor servant girl. They called her Bella. She smiled softly, but spoke little. She learned how hard life was outside the palace. She saw farmers cut their hands with tools, children sleep without food, and women cry for lost husbands in war. Each day taught her more about her people. She began to understand their pain, something she had never seen from her golden throne. One day, while carrying water, Isabella saw a young boy crying. His toy boat had fallen into the river. She tied her dress and stepped into the cold water. With effort, she pulled the boat out and handed it back. The boy's face lit up. Villagers watched and whispered. "She is brave," one said. Isabella's heart warmed. Helping the boy gave her more joy than any jewel had. That night, the old woman smiled at her and said, "Bella, you have a good heart." Isabella lowered her eyes, hiding the truth of who she was. One evening, a cruel man in the village shouted at a little girl. He pulled her hair because she dropped his food. Isabella rushed forward. "Stop," she cried. The man laughed. "Who are you, servant?" Isabella stood tall. "Leave her." She pushed the man's hand away. The villagers gasped at her courage. The man raised his hand, but other villagers stopped him. For the first time, they saw Bella as someone strong. That night, whispers spread. She is not like other servants. She speaks like someone higher. Isabella stayed silent. Winter came. The fields were white with snow. Isabella worked harder to keep warm. She cut wood, her fingers bleeding. She made soup for the old woman and carried water while her feet froze. But she also laughed with village children, making snowmen. She learned songs by the fire and danced in the cold nights. Slowly, she felt like one of them. But deep inside, she knew her kingdom still suffered. Enemies ruled the palace. She wanted to help, but she was afraid. If she showed her true self, she could be killed. One day, a traveler came with news. "The queen is dead," he said. The enemies ruled the palace now. Isabella froze. She could not show her feelings. The villagers bowed their heads. "Poor queen," they whispered. Isabella went to the river that night and cried alone. She was alive, but the world believed she was gone. She threw a stone into the water. Ripples spread far, like her pain. She asked herself, should I stay safe as Bella or rise again as Queen Isabella? The answer was not clear. As months passed, Isabella's secret almost broke. One night, the old woman watched her writing letters in the dark. Isabella had learned to write on cheap paper instead of golden scrolls. "Where did you learn to write so fine?" the old woman asked. Isabella froze. She smiled weakly and said, "An old teacher showed me." The woman nodded, but her eyes filled with doubt. She began to notice Isabella's manners, how she sat straight, how she spoke with weight, how she carried herself like someone who was born to lead. Trouble came again. Bandits entered the village, stealing food and hurting people. Isabella could not stay silent. She picked up a stick and stood in front of the children. "Leave them," she shouted. The bandits laughed, but Isabella fought fiercely. She hit one on the arm, kicked another. Villagers joined her courage and chased the bandits away. That night, people gathered around her. "Bella is brave. She is not an ordinary servant," they said. Isabella's heart pounded. Her secret was breaking faster, but she also saw the respect in their eyes. One night, a loyal soldier who once served her palace came to the village in disguise. He saw Isabella near the fire and fell on his knees. "My queen," he whispered. Isabella panicked. "Quiet," she hissed. But it was too late. The old woman and a few villagers heard. Their eyes widened. "Queen," they repeated. Isabella's secret was out. Tears filled her eyes. She nodded slowly. "Yes, I am Isabella, your queen. I hid in a servant's dress to survive." Silence filled the hut. Then the villagers knelt. "We will follow you," Isabella cried in relief. She told them her story, how she ran from the burning palace, how she lived as one of them, how she saw their pain. "I am not the same queen you once knew," she said. "Now I understand your life." The villagers smiled. "That is why we will fight with you," they said. Isabella's heart grew strong. For the first time, she felt not like a queen above her people, but a queen among her people. She decided she would take back her palace, not with pride, but with love. The loyal soldier brought news. "The enemy guards are lazy. The palace is weak now." Isabella stood tall. "Then we fight." Villagers sharpened tools, carried sticks, and prepared quietly. Isabella led them at night. They marched together, poor farmers and children of the land, holding torches. Isabella wore her servant dress but carried the heart of a queen. When they reached the palace, she looked at the burned walls and broken gates. Her eyes filled with fire. She whispered, "This is my home, and I will take it back." The battle was hard. Villagers fought bravely. Isabella led them inside the palace. She threw stones, pushed guards, and shouted, "For our home." The enemies laughed at first. But soon, the villagers grew stronger. Women threw boiling water, children screamed to confuse soldiers, and men fought with sticks like swords. Isabella stood in front, fearless. She had no crown, no jewels, but her courage was brighter than gold. Slowly, they pushed the enemies out. The palace shook with noise, fire, and the voices of people who refused to lose. At last, the enemy leader faced Isabella. "You are no queen," he spat. Isabella stood tall in her servant's dress. "I am more queen than you know. I lived with my people. I felt their pain. That makes me stronger," the man attacked. But Isabella dodged and struck with all her strength. Villagers joined her, and together they brought him down. The enemy soldiers fled. Cheers rose through the night. The palace was free again. Isabella looked at her servant dress, torn and dirty, and smiled. It had saved her life. The next day, the villagers cleaned the palace. They picked broken stones, washed the floors, and lit candles again. Isabella walked through the halls where she once lived in pride. Now, she remembered the river, the straw bed, the taste of bread from rough hands. She promised herself never to forget. She wore her crown again, but this time it felt different. It was no longer just a jewel. It was a promise to serve her people with kindness, not with pride. She was not the same queen anymore. News spread across the land. "The queen has returned," people shouted. Villagers from far places came to see her. They brought gifts, not gold, but baskets of bread, fruits, and flowers. Isabella greeted them with open arms. She listened to their stories, hugged their children, and promised safety. She sat with farmers and shared their meals. She asked mothers what they needed most. The palace was no longer closed. It became a home for the people. The queen had learned through her servant dress what real ruling meant. Years passed, and Isabella became loved across the land. She ruled with justice and care. When she walked in the market, people smiled, not because of fear, but because of love. She often wore simple clothes to remind herself of her past. She kept the servant dress folded in a wooden box. Whenever she felt weak, she opened the box and touched the rough cloth. It gave her strength. She remembered the night she escaped, the bread she ate, the boy's boat she saved, and the people who stood by her side. In the end, Isabella's story became legend. People said she was the queen who once hid in a servant's dress. Children grew up hearing it and learned that true power is not in gold or thrones, but in kindness, courage, and love. Isabella's name lived forever, not for her beauty or palace, but for the time she lived as one of her people. And now I ask you, if you were Isabella, would you have stayed safe in a palace or lived as a servant to save your people? What would you choose? My dear friends, the story of the queen in a servant's dress is full of secrets, pain, and courage. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like. Share it with your friends, and subscribe to Glorious English channel to learn more English through powerful stories. Your one comment means a lot to us. Tell me what you would do if you had to hide like the queen. Would you be brave or afraid? Write below. I am waiting to read your thoughts.